I just had a question from one of my meal prep consulting clients, and he asked where we were at as far as weekly client orders with our first year. Now, I told him that my judgment of what I consider our first year is going to vary because for the first 6 months, I was still working more than 60 hours a week with my existing business. My business partner in the meal prep company was also still full time with his business. So the 1 year calendar mark is different from what I really feel in my mind is the 1 year of the business, judging by when we started really taking it seriously and I removed myself from my roles and responsibilities in my primary business, and he did the same. And there's like a several month transition phase, but basically the first 6 months it was just a side project. We didn't have real high expectations. We wanted some free food, and we wanted the food wanted the food our way, and we kind of joked about maybe one day we'll be able to get a car payment out of this or something. But we didn't consider it a full-time business. So that mentality didn't change until at least the 6 month mark where we're like, okay, this is really taken off. We need to kind of shift our priorities and figure out how to unravel ourselves from our current businesses and focus more on this thing because it's a lot of fun and it's gaining traction. But regardless, our first calendar year, we definitely surpassed 100 clients. Now, I quickly followed that up with the fact that I want him to change his mindset. Don't think of it as at a year, I need to be at 100 clients. And if I'm 6 months in and I'm not at 100 clients, that's okay because at this point, Casey wasn't at 100 clients. For the most part, depending upon different variables of your pricing, your profit, and your business model, generally, I feel that the meal prep industry, you don't feel like a real business until you have at least 100 clients, because at that point, you've got enough money where you're able to start really hiring people to do a lot of the necessary, but maybe not necessarily done by you kind of tasks. So I would flip that. I would reframe it and instead pose the question of, instead of how do I get to 100 clients within a year, frame it as how fast can I get to 100 clients? Because at that point, in my opinion, you've graduated to the point where you've got a real business. You're not just doing this as a side project. This isn't a quote unquote side hustle. You've got employees, you've got infrastructure, you've got real clients, and you've got, a verified testable theory that is gaining traction and is functioning like a real business with a lot of the pains of a real business that you would only experience once you start scaling to at least 100 clients. Now, I also want you to consider a bit of the context. I want to take away some of your excuses so you set higher expectations for yourself. When we first started, we're talking a decade ago, 2014, nobody knew what meal prepping was. It wasn't an established business model. And as you'll see with a lot of people who are the first movers in a novel industry, a lot of the pain comes with educating the masses, educating your potential customers and clients that your business model exists and how it works. When we first started, we literally had to explain what meal prepping was and how our business worked to just about everybody. They would confuse it with meal kit delivery, which they were somewhat familiar with, and they would think, oh, so I have to cook this food? No, we cook it for you. Oh, so it's kind of like delivery where I put in an order and you deliver the food to me. Yes, but not live. This isn't like an Uber Eats scenario. And even then, Uber Eats really wasn't the phenomenon it is today. So if we were having to explain that to just about everybody, even people who would put orders in, they would call us an hour later and ask where the food is, not knowing that they're putting in orders to receive food for the next week. Regardless, what I'm getting to is even the people who were trying to give us money already had to be explained how our business model worked, let alone all the people out there who didn't know we existed, who would have definitely been interested, and were definitely interested once they understood who we were, what we did, how it all worked. It was an uphill battle because we had to also educate the masses how we worked, let alone that we existed. Now you've got the double-edged sword. 10 years later, practically everybody knows what meal prepping is, right? It's not going to be too often that you have to get on the call with somebody and explain what you do. You can just say, oh, we're a meal delivery service, we're a meal prep service, whatever. Now, the other edge of the sword is that becomes a mass awareness due to how ubiquitous the service is now. 10 years later, there's probably hundreds and hundreds as many meal prep companies out there. So your natural inclination is to think, well, gee, that means it's more saturated. How am I going to compete with that? I can tell you that in our first year, we would have some people tell us, the ones who were aware of meal prepping, even friends would say, oh, well, isn't that like everyone's doing that already? There's this company, that company. I've been on 3 companies myself. It seems like the market's pretty saturated, isn't it? Well, the example I always like to bring up is Starbucks. Imagine being one of the first people presented with the opportunity to invest in Starbucks years ago, and you hear their pitch. Yeah, we want to sell coffee at a premium price. We want to have retail locations all over the place, all over the world, and we're going to be huge. You'd probably be thinking, coffee? So coffee that I can make at my house literally by pushing a couple buttons on a machine, and it costs me pennies to make coffee. Coffee that I could buy if I'm not at my house at McDonald's, which are everywhere, Dunkin' Donuts, or just about every single restaurant on the face of the planet. That's your thing. You want to sell coffee, nothing new. Coffee that's been around for hundreds of years that people are making at their house and can get anywhere. You want to sell coffee? No thanks, Starbucks. I'm going to pass. Well, now Starbucks is everywhere. So as far as saturation was concerned, I would argue that, yeah, it sure did appear to be saturated. But if you were to tell your friends that you're going to be starting a restaurant, would they say, oh, restaurants already exist? That's saturated. Oh, you want to sell pizza? But there's already Papa John's and Domino's and Pizza Hut. The market's saturated. If I want pizza, I could already get pizza. So I can assure you from personal experience, it's easier to flip an existing meal prep client from one service to another than it is to fight the uphill battle of, number one, showing people that you exist, and number two, educating them on the entire concept. If you're already on a meal prep service, great. You've already identified yourself as somebody who recognizes the importance and convenience of a meal prep service. Now all I have to do is harp on my differentiators, harp on the negative experiences and the friction that you've had with your previous or existing meal prep services, and exemplify how we are going to surpass those expectations and experiences that you've already had, and why you should give us a try. I don't have to convince you that you should take a risk on this new and novel concept that you're unfamiliar with and sounds a bit weird. So is this food old? How's it stay fresh? Why are you giving me so much food at a time? What if I'm eating it 5 days late? All that is out the window when you're talking to somebody who's already accustomed to the meal prep service, or at least aware of the existence of the meal prep services. One of my business mentors gave me this great mindset framing. He said, you could have a beautiful mountain landscape in the background, and you can look at that mountain, or you can hold up your thumb and look at your thumb. If you look at the mountain, even with your thumb in front of you, it goes out of focus. But if you focus on that thumb, you don't get to enjoy the mountain. So focus on what you want to focus on, the obstacles or the opportunity. It's all a mindset game. If you're focusing on thumbs, don't quit your day job.